Gospel. Our Gospel lesson for tonight comes from Luke, the 13th chapter. At that very hour, some Pharisees came and said to him, "Get away from here, for Herod wants to kill you." He said to them, "Go and tell that fox for me, listen, I'm casting out demons and performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Yet today, tomorrow, and the next day I must be on my way, because it is impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wing, and you were not willing. Seeing your house is left to you, and I tell you, you will not see me until the time comes when you say, 'Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord.'" The word of our Lord. Please be seated. Now, folks, maybe I shouldn't be this honest, but as I read this passage here, this passage from Luke this week, and then as I read it again, I have to admit something. I don't get it. I don't get it. It totally confused me. And I'm going to guess, because as I was reading it, I'm going to guess it maybe confused a few of you too. I saw your eyes drift on that. When I first read this passage for today, I have to admit my first thought was I should have asked Pastor Rawl to preach tonight. Folks, this is a confusing one. It's a confusing one. First off, this little reading from Luke, it starts off with sort of a contradiction of sorts, and maybe you didn't even notice it. It says that the Pharisees came to Jesus, and these are the Pharisees who have been bickering and arguing with Jesus throughout his life. But here, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they decide to start being nice to him. They warn him that Herod wants to kill him. Now, that doesn't make sense to me. And second, it seems a little strange that these Pharisees tell Jesus that Herod wants to kill him, because just a few weeks back, we read here in church that Herod was curious about Jesus. He wanted to meet Jesus. And maybe more than anything else, this passage just seems to go on and on. The further you read, the more and more confusing it gets. Jesus calls Herod a fox, and then he's talking about performing cures and goes on with this business about it being impossible for a prophet to be killed outside of Jerusalem. He says how he wishes to gather the children of Israel like a hen gathers her chicks. Good Lord. What's this all about? Wouldn't it have been great if this was Pastor Mike's first weekend to preach? Folks, as we talk about this passage, I think it's one of those that just leaves us sort of scratching our heads. It does. And in the end, maybe it's enough to say about this passage, knowing that we're on this march towards Easter. Knowing the big story of our faith, that Jesus will eventually arrive in this place called Jerusalem, and there things aren't going to go so well for Jesus. There in Jerusalem, all the powerful people of his day, Herod, the scribes, the Pharisees, the leaders of both the religious and the political world are all going to come together. And knowing that they will all come together and put him down, they'll put him on the cross. Maybe knowing all that, it's enough to say that we don't really know what the Pharisees are up to here. We don't know if Herod really wanted to kill Jesus, and we may not fully understand what Jesus is rambling on and on about here. But folks, there's one thing that we do know. We do know that in the end, both the Pharisees and Herod, all the powers of Jerusalem, they get their way. They get their way with Jesus. The people of Jerusalem get their way. In the end, the Pharisees get Jesus arrested. You know the story. Herod gets to finally meet Jesus face to face. And in the end, we know that Jesus is put down. He's stopped. He's put on a cross. He's killed there in Jerusalem. Herod, the Pharisees, Pilate, the crowds, they all sort of represented the powers in that day. They were the powers of the political and religious institutions. And they all gathered together. They joined forces and they formed sort of an alliance, you could say. And they come together in this big, nasty, powerful machine. All who had power and influence, they came together because they all wanted Jesus dead. Because they were all afraid of losing their power. So they came together to do away with this young, seemingly insignificant man by the name of Jesus. The one from that little town, Nazareth, born in a barn in that town of Bethlehem, behind an old motel, to parents who were really nobodies. Folks, the powerful got what they wanted. They crushed Jesus. And of course, this isn't really all that surprising to us. First off, we know the story, right? We've been told this since we were children. But we also know all too well that the bigger you are, the more powerful you are, right? And the big guy always prevails over the little guy, always devours the smaller guy. The bigger you are, the more influence you have. People owe the powerful folks of this world favors. We say that the big are too big to fail. We live by that saying, bigger is better. And we learn this lesson at a very young age. For example, if you were to put 2 cookies in front of my 2.5-year-old son, Yoren, one bigger, one smaller, which is he going to choose? Bigger. The bigger. Bigger is better. Or at Christmas time, when it's time to open all those presents, and given a choice, which presents are the kids going to open first? It's always the biggest. Right. At an early age, we learn on the playground, if you're picking teams, you always want the bigger, the stronger kids. You pick them first. We know that bigger is better. It's ingrained in us. We know this. We shop at bigger and bigger stores. While we know that those bigger and bigger stores have sort of bulldozed one mom and pop shop after another. Right? We've moved from quaint little houses in little neighborhoods to bigger and bigger lots where there's more and more space for bigger and bigger garages. We trade our smaller cars for bigger cars because bigger is better. And so when I think of this confusing reading this evening, I guess it's enough to say that the story was the same way back in Jesus' day as it is now. You see, way back then, the story was all about the big and the powerful. Herod, the Pharisees, Jerusalem, the empire. And then there was the small, that seemingly insignificant young man, Jesus. A nobody who hung out with the outcast, the sick, and the lame. And folks, we know from the very beginning who's going to win out in that game. But then as our reading goes on today, then there's this Jesus, and in this reading, I don't think Jesus quite understands that bigger is better. You see, Jesus, knowing what is about to happen to him, knowing that this big and powerful alliance is going to come, and they're going to come together, they're going to crush him, and knowing that he is the Son of the Most High, he's the Son of God, knowing all this, in our reading today, I don't understand why Jesus says what he says to those who will put him down. He says some words towards the end of our reading. Rather than spitting words of anger or drawing a line in the sand, rather than doing all Jesus, the Son of God, could have done, Jesus says some, tender words. Jesus turns to those who had all the power, who are about to put him down, and he says some words in this reading. He says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem. He says, how I wish I could gather you. How I wish I could gently gather you together. Gather you under my wings, protect you. All all of you who are so in love with power and being big and mighty, how I wish you'd put down your guard for a minute. That maybe you'd breathe a little. That you weren't so insecure, so in love with that power of yours. How I want to care for you. I want to care for you just as you are. Folks, this is what he says to the ones who are going to kill him. Gentle, tender words. And I just don't get it. I don't understand. I mean, I want to say to Jesus, Jesus, these people are going to kill you. Why do you have to be so weak, so kind, so caring? Jesus, you're the Son of God. Start acting like you're strong. You're powerful. Start acting like you're really the Son of God. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think when we think of God, don't we usually want a God who resembles more of a Superman kind of character? Someone more powerful and courageous, ready to take names. We much prefer a conquering Jesus, the Jesus of Easter morning, a Jesus able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. But that's not the Jesus we get here today. Today he's kind of weak. He cries over his enemies. He's a little small. And yet I wonder tonight, folks, I wonder, maybe this is exactly the kind of God we need. I mean, maybe we don't quite understand this meek and small Jesus, but maybe this is the kind of God we need. A God who understands how we get wrapped up in power, in being strong, in being bigger at all costs. A God who sees how we are at times kind of like Herod, like the Pharisees, like Jerusalem. We live for the big and the powerful, and the story of that big guy bulldozing the little guy. And even though we're in love with getting bigger, just maybe we need a God who knows what we know, deep inside. A God who knows that though it seems we love all that's big and powerful most days, deep inside, deep down, a God who knows that usually we don't feel so big. That's if we're honest. Most days we feel like all the cards are held by the pharaohs, by the Pharisees, by the Herods, by the Jerusalems of the world. We feel sort of small, sometimes even insignificant, I think, as though we don't have a voice in this great big world of ours, as though we can't really make a difference, as though our hurts and pains don't mean all that much. Deep down, don't we wonder from time to time if God has time for each of us amid God's great, huge creation? Folks, maybe what we need isn't big and powerful and all-conquering God, but a God who knows what we know deep inside. A God who says to you and to me today what he said way back when to those Pharisees, to those who were so in love with power. Oh, my beloved, my children, I know you love power, yet you feel kind of small, insecure sometimes. I know you hurt now and then. I know you feel insignificant some days. Come, let me protect you. Come, let me remind you of my love for you, that I will go to any length for you because you are so significant in my world. You make a difference to me. You mean so much to me. You are so important. You are mine. You are my child. Folks, way back when people loved power, they wanted to be bigger at all costs. And they were afraid of anything that threatened their status. And folks, I think God knows we're still the same today. And so Jesus comes. Jesus came way back when and comes today to save us from our bigness, maybe we could say. That we might know we are his children. That we are of infinite worth. Thanks be to God.